it is recording. We are online and I will broadcast now. Hello, everybody. We will just give everybody around 1 to 2 minutes to join us here. So please bear with us for another 1 to 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay, just while we wait, I would...
Sarah, you need, sorry for interruption, you need to reassign me because at least one of us should be assigned so that when Abdulatif explains, I'll be on the interpretation channel telling them so that they can hear my voice. You unassigned this, okay.
Should work now. Okay, so I just wanted to share with you some language information. We will have translation into Arabic available, and in the end, actually translation into English. So please, in the lower right corner, click on interpretation, and then choose the language you would like to listen to the whole webinar in. So English or Chinese for Arabic. And then you will be able to listen in just that language, and it will be switching automatically. And Abdulatif, maybe if you can just translate this quick for those in Arabic.
صباح الخير جميعا. للترجمة العربية، للاستماع للترجمة العربية، في أسفل الشاشة هناك شكل الكرة الأرضية مع مكتوب تحته أو أسفله interpretation. يرجى النقر على ذلك الزر واختيار اللغة التي ترغبون في الاستماع والتحدث بها. للإنجليزية اختار English، للعربية اختاروا Chinese. التشاينيز رح تسمعوا عليه عربي وتتحدثوا عليه بالعربي. Ronia, over to you.
Perfect. Let me just reassign you. And then, okay, I would like to start now just with a few notes.
التقنية في هذا السياق.
That is about the technical facility or facilitation of this event. We will be having first a presentation after the opening words of Ms. Sarah Hep. We'll have the presentation of the study. Then we will have a panel discussion. The panelists I will introduce when we have the panel discussion. We will have a very interactive event today, so we'll be asking you quite a lot of questions. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A.
Ronnie,
yes,
you need to reassign me.
Yes, I'm seeing that there's language problems. I do not know why, and I'm fixing it just now. Just give me 1 second. Now it should work. So now you should actually be hearing the translation into Arabic. So I will say this again. If you have any questions, please ask them in the Q&A section. If you do in the panel discussion later on, possibly also want to join us and ask a question with the video input, that's also fine. We can assign you. If you do have any technical issues please inform either me or Dina Kisby. We'll be more than happy to help you. Just for everybody to know, again, we will be recording this webinar in English, and we'll share the link as well next week with everybody that can then follow up with this. Also, for you to know, at the end of this event, we will be sharing a sneak peek into the study. The study is not yet published on our website, so you're going to be having a first view of it. And we'll be sharing that towards the end of this webinar. Now, I'd really like to thank everybody that's here with us, the panelists as well as the attendees. Again, the panelists I will present when we actually come to the panel, but now I'd like to give the word to Ms. Sarah Heb. She's the Director of the Regional Energy and Climate Project in the MENA region, and she will be doing the opening words now. To you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Rania. Esteemed guests, dear ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome you to the digital launch of the report Urban Mobility and Spatial Justice of Amman. This report is a product from a cooperation between the Regional Climate and Energy Project MENA of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, the University of Jordan, and the Greater Amman Municipality. We are very pleased to launch the report on the occasion of International Women's Day, or Better Week, that reminds us once a year that more than half of the population is underrepresented, disadvantaged, or even oppressed. For exactly 100 years, every 8th March, demonstrations have been held worldwide for women's rights, for equal rights and emancipation. The Corona year was a real elevation in this respect. It was mainly women who working in system-relevant, often poorly paid jobs in hospitals, intensive care units, nursing home, and supermarket checkouts. And they provided the basic care for our society during the crisis. At the same time, it was they, even more than usual, who did the unpaid care work at home. Gender imbalances became particularly clear. On Women's Day, women are often given flowers, or the mainly female nurses and carers for the elderly were applauded loudly during Corona. However, thanks are just as insufficient as applause. Rather, this recognition must lead to a vision and concrete policies for a more gender equal society. And a key to achieving a gender equal society is mobility. Access to transport is essential for allowing marginalized groups, not only women, but also poor citizens, the elderly, children, and people with disabilities to achieve their full potential. In a study published in 2019 by FES and SEDACA, we analyzed the impacts of poor quality or even the lack of transportation on women. One of our key findings was that women's economic situation is directly proportional to their level of mobility. Efficient public transportation systems become a tool for empowering women and enabling women to access jobs and economic opportunities. Moreover, improving women's mobility will ultimately enhance their role in the household and workplace in terms of decision-making, economic independence, women's rights to public spaces, and political participation. Therefore, transport and gender need to be thought in a strongly interrelated way, and we have to ensure that the women's agenda is continuously and consistently addressed in future urban policy planning, design, and implementation. The publication we would like to present to you today makes a contribution to this. This project seeks to further the exploration on challenges women and marginalized groups face in the public transport system. We identified the key challenges that women face in the public transport system in Jordan in general, and in Amman in particular from evidence-based research. We want to suggest solutions on the policy and urban design levels that take into consideration context specifics and that may be implemented in collaboration with the array of stakeholders associated to public transport realistically. I don't want to spoil anything else now, but give the Yala and Ahmed the floor straight away to present the results of this report. But first, I would like to express my gratitude to both of them, to Dr. Deyala Taraune of the University of Jordan and to Ahmed Abu Hussein of the Greater Amman Municipality, and also to our program manager, Ronja Schiffer, because those three were at the heart of this project into which they put so much enthusiasm and dedication. Even though this report is now finished, our close cooperation continues. And we also have big plans for this year, and we will keep you all informed about this. I would also like to thank at this point Dr. Salma Nims of the Jordanian National Commission for Women and Hazem Suraikat of NGCON, who will enrich our discussion with their insights once the Yala and Ahmed presented the publication. Of course, also thanks to all of you participating here today. We very much appreciate it. And thank you very much for your attention. And I would say the floor is yours, Yala and Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for your kind and warm words. We mutually would like to share our gratitude with you as well. We'd like to thank FES for the constant support that they provided throughout this very difficult times, especially that the study started in early February. So most of the time we were constricted with COVID-19, but still you made all this effort to make this a reality and make the study come true. So without further ado, first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone in the audience as well and thank all the panelists. Ronja, thanks a lot for facilitating and being a great team member. Today, we're here to talk about the Urban Mobility and Spatial Justice of Amman report. So without further ado, please, Ronja, move to the next slide. In this presentation, we will give a short introduction about the publication, then we will talk about the study components, and lastly, we'll come to some recommendations and actions. Next, please. Thank you very much. No, just move to the slide before. As you can see, the team is interdisciplinary. We had people from the academic sector, from the government, and from the private sector, which made the whole approach interdisciplinary as well. Next, please. To quickly introduce the study, several urban mobility studies highlight that female transit users share a unique experience that is wholly different from that of the typical male user, especially in developing countries. Whether due to society, culture, or policy matters, female users feel compromised while taking public transportation and remain dissatisfied with what should be considered a fundamental right. This dissatisfaction also extends to the experience of minorities in general, such as persons with disabilities and other marginalized groups. To further understand the user's particular mobility experience, Urban Mobility and Spatial Justice represents an extension of a pilot study conducted in collaboration with the FES that examines mobility through a gender/intersectional lens in various but carefully selected locations across the city of Amman. Next, please. Next, please. Thank you. Generally speaking, we will go through the methodology, which provides a relevant context of the study and approach. Then we will move to the current mobility trends and conditions in Amman, such as the construction of the BRT or the bus rapid transit system and the newly added system of the Amman bus. And lastly, we'll go through the approach and available data sets, which lay the foundation for analyzing current mobility trends through different intersectional mediums, which we identified throughout the study and where poverty, politics, urban development, urban complexity, and adaptation. Next, please. Overall, the study objectives can be summarized in 3 main points. This publication's main objective is to understand how a variety of developing and emerging urban mobility trends, which successfully provide accessibility across multiple city infrastructures and its linked systems at the metropolitan level, will deliver great access to urban services for all users, especially for females. Secondly, this publication explores how evidence-based urban policies extend well beyond any city's socioeconomic makeup and pave the way to new concepts of urban intersectionality. Thirdly, from this analysis, the publication utilizes models, poses guiding questions, and presents 4 fundamental principles to provoke and inspire action from policymakers, academics, designers, and local governments. Next, please. Okay, so speaking about the methodology, selecting our study areas was based on different site factors, including density, socioeconomic indicators, location, and access to critical urban services, especially during the COVID-19 lockdown. This method ensured a healthy integration of any future urban mobility policies. Secondly, we enhanced the accuracy of our methodological approach through utilizing technological toolkits, which is the Urban Network Analysis Toolkit that we will be discussing later, that analyzes access to urban services within neighborhoods on foot where the focus locations were preliminary to diagnose. Thirdly, the results were cross-referenced with the outcomes of the site visits, and these site visits were conducted prior to lockdown in January 2020. And lastly, a comprehensive multi-level examination was conducted with experts from private sector, academia on each of the focus areas. And this paved the way for adopting a participatory approach aimed at including an array of stakeholders associated with the research in order to improve the accuracy of our findings and recommendations. The research was split into 6 phases. The first phase, preliminary data collection and understanding the context through site visits and general observations. In the second phase, we introduced urban sustainability concepts to the different stakeholder groups through workshops and discussion sessions. Thirdly, data analysis and context visualization took place. In the fourth phase, we utilized the digital mobility toolkit, as well as attempted to localize and contextualize them as needed in order to establish measurable indicators and parameters, of course. In the fifth stage, we suggested potential interventions within existing policies and urban practices. And lastly, we shared the presentations and findings of the research for increased awareness impact. And this research and data collection were mostly achieved throughout disc research, digital stakeholder meetings, and limited in-person field research, which is impacted by the COVID-19 movement restrictions. Next, please. So, intersectionality. In an attempt to further understand the characteristics and components of urban mobility, a comprehensive intersectional system was incorporated into the research. The introduction of urban intersectionality is relatively new to this type of research. Next, please. Typically, because if gender was the topic of interest to be discussed, then it is usually done in a clear female-centric manner. Next, please. However, for this study, we opted for a broader spectrum of targeted vulnerable groups, as this seems more representative of any social fabric. Allow me now to introduce my colleague and friend.
Diala, just 1 second. Can you try to slow down a little bit? The interpretation is having issues with the translation.
I apologize. Hopefully they will have it easier with Ahmed, which I'm happy to introduce now to continue his part in the analysis. I'm proud to call Ahmed an advocate for gender equality. So to you, Ahmed.
Thank you, Diala, and thank you, FES, for this amazing webinar. Welcome everybody, and I hope you will like this publication and the approach that we tried to market for. I will talk briefly about, I'm a technical person, so I will try to talk briefly how the research came to life. I will dive right into the selection criteria of the sites. 5 locations were selected in 5 different neighborhoods to act as a catalyst for future research about mobility in Amman and how it is affected by urban mobility trends. These 5 locations, they have certain characteristics. I will dive in details later. But to give you an idea, we selected one in Al-Hashmi Al-Shamali, and then one in Al-Khazne. Another one was in Abdun Corridor and Zahran area, the 4th one, and the final one was Al-Waha Circuit. Each location has, again, certain characteristics that were selected amongst many sites. And based on that, we did our interventions. But again, the main elements that affected the selection criteria were density, as Diala mentioned before, and according to 2015 census, we can see in this image the density in all the neighborhoods of Amman, and how it is ranging from low density and high density. This will come handy in the selection criteria. We also looked into another tool that was utilized by GAM multiple times in multiple occasions, and also in my own research with Diala. This is the Urban Network Analysis tool, and it's a tool that is developed by MIT and Harvard together through individuals that are very passionate about enhancing evidence-based technologies to help policymakers and other urbanists and designers to make better decisions for elevating and enhancing the quality of life in cities. This tool works in conjunction with the GIS and tries to, you give them the destination that that everybody should go to within the city, and then it gives you this gravity map that shows where are the strong areas and where are the weak areas of the fabric that you selected, which means here the blue ones are low in reachability, which also means service is not that good. And the red ones are highly connected and highly accessible, which means the service will be ultimately better. So the surrounding areas as well, people who live there will have better chances to acquire job opportunities and quality of life. Of course, we took that into consideration when we go back to the density map that I showed you before, that was taken from the census of 2015, and we apply it on the urban network analysis. And then we also add our sites. We can see the variety of the sites in terms, scientifically speaking, in terms of density and reachability. Each site has its own level of reachability, and it has its own level of density as well. During the period of COVID-19, between March and May, these maps were developed if you want a clear timeline. And the main concern was analyzing the existing mobility trends in the selected site. But the biggest challenge was producing a methodology that is scientifically, as I mentioned before, valid to develop these maps in conjunction with GIS. Again, I cannot stress enough how important this approach was for our research later, because it helped us generate the emerging themes of each site. Now, if we go back to every site that I showed you, you will notice that there are 5 sites. And each one of them was categorized with a certain theme. And these themes, from a theoretical lens, was also intersected with urban trends or urban mobility trends. So the first theme talks about mobility through politics, and that is one of the sites that was concentrated in Zahran area. Mobility through politics, it sheds more light on Amman's political landscape and highlighted the role of mobility that plays in improving political participation. And then the second theme that I will jump right into is the urban poverty and mobility and how it affects job opportunities. It is addressed in this theme and how spatial justice played a major role in that particular theme. And it discussed it from how the connectivity to opportunities or services around the area was established, And also it introduces a new concept of urbanism, which is poverty, urban poverty through mobility. That was not very well discussed in many fields before. And then the third theme, we talk about tactical approach to upgrading urban mobility. This tactical approach introduces a concept of tactical urbanism, which is a very well-known term before. But again, I want to stress the fact that working in the government, these concepts are applied, but not in the sense that the terminologies that we know. That when someone is very theoretical, and then there's someone that is very practical, they don't meet in the middle with the terminologies. That's why we wanted to give these themes a sort of an academic / a practical manner. And tactical urbanism is one of the approaches that we wanted also to tackle. The fourth theme is urban mobility for improved livability and livelihood. This is a very straightforward theme that is an outcome of any study that tries or aims to enhance quality of life, because it sheds light on the connection between urban indicators and mobility. It also showcases how improved mobility aids in more livable cities through more sustainable livelihood strategies and better quality of life. The final theme is the future of urban mobility. This is very critical for Amman in particular because of the current state. It lays the foundation of identifying potential future research and the ways in which this project can contribute to a broader intersectional discussion on mobility. Please make sure that all these themes that I'm trying to show here, they're just a pilot for future projects. So you can take each theme on its own as an introduction for a future project. These are the sites in details. The first one is urban mobility through politics. This is in Zahran area. The goals and objectives, we had a clear metric for each site. Our main objectives for this, with the students, of course, and throughout the research, was to improve public transportation in that area, enhance walkability, preserve its urban identity, because it does have a lot of features that is connected to the identity of the city. But the main challenges were the BRT does not pass directly through the site. The area is known for its political gatherings and mass protests, and frequency of public transport is erratic. It's not very organized. Even though this, when we talk about the fourth circle, أو الدول الرابع بما معناه معروف بالنسبة لعمان, that it is an area that everybody gathers there to protest on something. So addressing that issue will help other sites to voice your opinion more across the city, not just this site. And the second site is urban poverty and mobility. This was in collaboration with the private sector. That's why in a minute I will introduce my colleague Harun, because in this area in particular, the levels of poverty or the socioeconomic values or indicators aligns very well with this theme. And many goals can be achieved from that site, which is to enhance infrastructure, enhance social cohesion and security, enhance green and open spaces, because again, it's a marginalized area. Challenges were high population density. It's one of the highest in the city. Gender-based struggles because of density and other factors. Poverty and unemployment, because the lack of proper infrastructure hinders the accessibility to better opportunities, and also lack of urban safety. Site number 3 was, let's say, a tactile approach to upgrading urban mobility. This is in Abdun Corridor. It's an empty area. So there is a lot of goals to be achieved there. Enhance investments for development, propose a cycling lane, propose a master plan for cutting edge bus stops. That was also one of the goals. But the main challenges were connection to the future BRT development. That's why it's important to include the Greater Amman Municipality in that particular project, or Amman Vision for that matter. Connection between two different social classes in the area, because we have in the south a different social fabric than, let's say, southwest is a different social fabric than northwest. So that has to be addressed as well. And then, but the major challenges also is to attract investments. This is, I think, this is the topic of the hour. These past few weeks, we talked about investments a lot across the government and why it is a critical issue. So this is one of the sites that can actually produce policies or recommendations for that. And then we talk about the last site, which is the future of urban mobility. This is in Waha Circle. It's a very well-known area. We need to work within that fabric to enhance and propose a comprehensive urban transportation development policy, because it's already well-established area. Enhance urban safety and gender justice there. Promote social entrepreneurship hubs in that area. We feel that it can be a candidate for that because it has a very high traffic there. And it's very close to the BRT if we go up north. Challenges, also lack of investments. As I said, it's a very critical issue. Various major city connections. Sorry, this is the Khazne site. It connects to various areas. It has a major transportation hub, which is the North Terminal. And air pollution due to construction of BRT. This street here acts as a major contributor to air pollution. Now I will move to my colleague Harun. He will only discuss the involvement of the private sector within this study and why it was important to incorporate these ideas. So to you, Harun.
Thank you, Ahmed. I'll be speaking in Arabic. هلا أنا كقطاع خاص كان همي الوحيد هو زيادة إمكانية حصول أكبر عدد من الأفراد على فرص عمل، خصوصاً الفئات المستضعفة أو اللي ساكنين بالأطراف المدينة أو بالأماكن الأقل حظاً. ولما يكون عندنا منظومة نقل مريحة وآمنة تنعكس على عطاء الموظف في العمل وبتخفض أعبائه في المواصلات والوصولية للشغل وبتحسن الراحة النفسية له. وكأي قطاع خاص ممكن نخسر مهارات وكفاءات كثيرة من الفئات المستضعفة بالذات بسبب الوصولية والمواصلات. ودوري كان تقريباً توعوي أكثر في توسيع مدارك الدراسة، في التصميم، في الأفكار، في إيش نقلوا لي الموظفين خلال السنين اللي اشتغلتها، وإنه كل المناطق اللي حكينا عنها قبل شوي تكون تجمع كافة الفئات أو أكبر عدد من الفئات فيها كلها يعني. Back to you, Diala. Thank you.
Thank you, Harun, for this highlight. It was very important to address the private sector view on this in this project in particular. Sorry, I was writing an answer to Suleiman, which I'll continue later. So next slide, please. In an attempt to integrate the gender concepts with the societies and to extend the idea of mobility of her far beyond the project period, as well as further emphasize that gender must always be considered when thinking about cities, the research team aimed to align the project with the national and international agenda conveniently, since the project started with the International Women's Day, which seemed like a timely opportunity to launch the idea of our research to the public. So we launched the poster idea, and in the poster idea, the general guidelines included to use the same color schemes of the International Women's Day with an emphasis on the color purple, which is, according to the International Women's Development Agency, is the color historically denoted to justice and dignity. We held a group workshop at the beginning of the campaign. The participants were divided into groups, and each group was asked to hand in 2 sheets, a concept sheet and a final poster. During this exercise, we gave them constant feedback, and we arrived at 5 main posters. 2 of them will be shown in the next slide. So next, please. And the others are shared in the appendix of the study. So you can have a look at it once this study is published. So for the first poster we see on the right, we all steer, طال عصبية. The idea behind that poster or the slogan reads طال عصبية, which in English translates to women, you are riding. This refers to the fact that in Jordan, driving a private car for individual use or as a taxi is usually done by male. Another subliminal message this poster tries to show is the connection between driving and steering in reference to the woman representation in steering or leading, between quotations, and in leading positions, where they may have more influence if given the opportunity. The second poster you see to the left, درب السلامة, translated into English, a safe road. It is often said in prayer for a safe trip. So if you would like to wish someone a safe trip, you would say درب السلامة, or to always find safe roads through your travels, inspired by the strike and each for equal pose, which was the slogan for last year's campaign. The idea originally located from the International Women's Day 2020 official's website, and the logo for the second poster symbolizes the 2 arms of a society, with the upper hand belonging to the female, as you can see the nail polish. I'm sorry, we couldn't find anything more representative, belonging to the female user of the road, and the lower hand and equal hand belonging to the male user of the road, indicating the need for more females in position of power. And we will end with the recommendations and findings. So back to you, Ahmed.
Ahmed and Diala, just as a quick note, you have around 1 more minute because we're a little bit behind. So please try to stay within that.
Yeah, no problem. It's the last few slides. So for recommendations and actions, we divided them into 2 main parts. The first part is very practical and based on what is actually existing at the moment within the institution or the governmental institutions. And we did take the Amman Green City Action Plan. In this Green City Action Plan, they have a lot of actions. And we looked at them in the study after we've done all the analysis. And we decided to pick 3 actions from them right now that can be enhanced to be let's say, a starting point for inclusive and just implementations of the project, and also in accordance with SDGs. So these actions that we selected from all the Green City Action Plan actions, which is a lot of them, almost 300, is the BRT right now is the main focus of our should be the main focus of any intervention that promotes justice and equality between all the groups in the community. And then the second action that we selected was to implement a public transportation awareness plan that is already, it has to include the outcomes of the study in that action. And the third one we selected is to promote walkability, which is a very generic, let's say, outcome of any study in particular. Is to enhance sidewalks and maintenance. This action from the Green City Action Plan, if we also incorporated the equality between all groups, if you design these sidewalks for all groups, even the smallest or the most marginalized, you design for the whole city. And then the second part, which is a surprise, no, it's like a small surprise, that our city certainly needs a gender action plan for equitable mobility. This is one of the outcomes from the study. This gender action plan for equitable mobility will provide intersectional perspectives into urban planning by giving the recommended tools, policies, and actions stemmed from the themes, the 5 themes, to create better strategies and help enhance the quality of public spaces and make them more safe, welcoming, and comfortable for everyone in society. And also this byproduct will encourage economic opportunities. If we enhance all these elements, then opportunities will also rise. Well, that's what we care about at the end. In particular, when we look at this, we wanted more jobs for people. We wanted more chances for them to be themselves in these spaces and not feel threatened. So these two goals can be done if we created a comprehensive gender action plan that is on its own standing alone, can guide other policies within the government. And this has a small vision. In accordance, maybe we can give a timeline between 2030 and 2040 that can be all implemented. These small actions that we took in the recommendations in 20 years, maybe they will all be implemented. And this is our hope, is to open the way for Greater Amman Municipality to be able to address gender and other marginalized groups in their implementation between 2030 and 2040. And thank you. Back to you, Ronya.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for the study. Of course, I am a little bit biased because I'm also a co-author of this study, and I really like this project, and I think especially the recommendations. Again, we will share the study both in English and in Arabic with you at the end of the event through a link. It's not yet published, so you will be able to get a sneak peek. We now have a little survey for you, which we will ask you to find in the chat box, and if you could possibly just answer it in the next 30 seconds, that would be great. You should all be able to see the link now. It's just a quick survey that will be followed up later on as well, and the question is, moving in and around Amman is, and we have 3 answers: enjoyable, except for a few smaller problems; possible for certain parts of society; challenging in most parts. And you can agree or disagree with all of them. So again, you have around 30 seconds. Please take the time, and then I will be sharing the results with you as well. Okay, I will be sharing live results now. So I will be sharing my screen, and you will be able to see it now. So as you can see, it's most of you agree that it's challenging in most parts. Possible for certain parts of society is around 3.5. So it is possible, but there are limitations. And then very little of you are saying it is enjoyable, except for a few smaller problems. So I think it really underlines also the study and what we have been saying. Coming back now to the panel discussion, I would like for all the panelists to possibly show their video. And I would really like to welcome, you've already met Diala, Dr. Diala Tarana and Ahmed Abu Hussein just now with the presentation, but the panel also includes 2 other really wonderful and really important people when it comes to this topic in Jordan. I would first like to welcome Dr. Salma Nims. I think she's a real pioneer, and we all know her. She's the Secretary General of the Jordanian National Commission for Women since 2014, if I believe. And a very interesting fact about her is that she has an urban planning background herself. So this topic is not new to her. As well as I would like to welcome Hazem Zurikad. I think when we talk about transportation, we all know him because he's not just working in the transport sector as a consultant, but also with NGCON. He also is one of the heads of Man Nasil, which was a very, very successful civil society initiative, which is still going strong. I would like to give the word to Dr. Salma Nims first, to just have the word for a minute or 2, then to Hazem, and then we'll start the questions.
Thank you so much, Rania, and thank you for Frederick Ebert for giving me this opportunity. And also, I would like to thank all the contributors to the study for a very interesting study and for their And I don't want to start responding now. I just want to, you told me I should introduce myself. So, and I would like to introduce myself from my side as an architect and an urban, someone who had, although it was a very short experience, but it was a very dense experience, because in my in my graduation project, in the University of Jordan, it was about downtown Amman. It was about connecting East and West Amman. It was about accessibility to culture and to open spaces, and about that this is not something that should be an elitist, like that cultural activities and entertainment and is something that should not be elitist. And then I was during my 3 years of work, I was involved in the Al Muhajirin project. I was the project manager with working for Bilal Hamad. So I was also involved in the envisioning. I wasn't the lead, I was just a junior architect, but I was like working with people like late Ja'far Tuqan and with Bilal Hamad, listening to them and for their vision to Amman at the time. And we had so many dreams. So to me, it was architecture is about the city and how people interact within the city and how it provides them an opportunity to live and without like the impact of vulnerability about them. So this is where I come from. So gender to me is not only a gender issue. When I left architecture and went to study sustainable development, it was about planning from an intersectional approach. Gender became more of my expertise because of my career, but I never saw this as separate from other intersectionalities with vulnerability, and we can talk about that later during the panel.
Thank you so much. Hazem, I would also like to give you the word now. And you, of course, will have a chance in the panel to react as well.
Thank you, Ronya. Should I introduce myself, or I've prepared just a few remarks for a few minutes, maybe 3 to 4 minutes. First of all, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all those who attended. I know it's a very difficult time for us in Jordan now with the pandemic. And I also want to thank FES for for working on this and supporting other studies as well in the past. And I'm happy to see a growing number of studies and literature on this topic. I want to mention the study that I had, I had the chance of working with FES on through the AE Business Council on the neighborhoods of Amman, the resilience of neighborhoods of Amman during COVID-19. There's the gender and public transportation study that Sadaqa and FES worked on. There's a recent GIZ study as well on gender and public spaces. So it's nice in Amman. So it's nice to see this growing literature, and I hope it gets translated soon into policies on the ground. And I won't comment much. I don't want to comment much on the gender aspect of mobility and public transport, because I think the experts on the panel are more qualified to do so than I am. I'll add my perspective as a practitioner or as a transport planner, and that we should always consider all aspects of the public transport trip when we think about gender, when we think about different groups of people, from walking to the feeder service that takes us to the main line. So the last mile that the study touched on and emphasized, to the in-vehicle experience, to the experience in the station or in the bus stop. So I think this should be, we should think about it holistically. Of course, women, people with disabilities, as was mentioned earlier. We should also think about the design of the network. I know there's, and I think this was mentioned in the study, trip patterns for females and for certain groups differ greatly from for trip patterns for men, for example. There are more chained trips with multiple destinations. How can we accommodate that through the public transport network and through providing other types of transport services that can accommodate this travel behavior? I think this is something that we really can do a lot of work on in Jordan. Our transport legislations today are very limiting in the types of services that are allowed. So there's a lot of work we can do there. I wanted to briefly talk about the BRT, since the study mentions the BRT, and I like the fact that it's an intersectional study, and since we're talking about intersectionality, and I want to talk about the BRT as just the multidimensional aspects of this project, because I feel that the discourse on the BRT and the way things are being done show a certain one-dimensional view or a bias towards a certain group over another when we talk about the BRT. In terms of a number of aspects. The BRT that's under construction in Amman, for it to succeed, it can't succeed alone. This is not just about the BRT. The BRT has to operate in a network, in a transport network that includes feeder services, it includes walking infrastructure. So it's very important to think about that. We always think about the BRT as one project with a start and an end date, but this is not the case. It's part of an interconnected network. It is part of an established city, a built environment, and it has to work with that. The BRT is also not about the infrastructure. There's also a lot of focus about, we have reached this milestone in building the BRT, but really, in reality, the BRT is also a service at the end of the day, and we need to think about how the service is provided, how it accounts for different groups of people, not just the built aspects of the BRT. There's also a very important aspect. I feel like there's, and when we talk about, Diala talked about inclusion and justice, we still are biased towards car users, private car users in Amman. When we see this in the construction of the BRT, actually. We're building a public transport system, but we have built so many bridges and tunnels as part of this public transport system. So this really shows that there is a bias, and we're still worrying about what private car users will experience when the BRT comes into operation, that we're building all this additional infrastructure, which the BRT was meant to reduce. Sorry if I'm taking a long time, I just 1 or 2 more minutes. I just wanted to emphasize by this comment on the BRT is that and I think this was highlighted in the study as well, and in the premise for the study is that this is not about individual projects. We need a change in the mindset. We need to think about the different dimensions of the problem. I think the lack of this, or the very slow change in mindset, if I want to be fair, we see this in the points that I mentioned about the BRT. We see this in the lack of willingness to subsidize public transport. We have a public transport fund stipulated in the law that was never established. We have the issue with not being able to deal with the individual operators. I don't think this is an issue of operators being very strong or influential. I think it's just a lack of political will and a weakness on the part of the government. So I just wanted to highlight these points, I think, which I tried to, I think they fall in line with this topic of intersectionality, and I hope we can discuss this more during the panel.
Thank you so much to both of you, and also, of course, we all quickly realized this is all a political topic, of course, always, which we also, when we approached the study from first point, we're like, are we really going to include politics and the topic of this politics as a zone that we're going to study with the fourth circle? And we actually assumed, yes, I think, or we think this is really highly relevant. And talking to experts, stakeholders, they confirmed this. Now, Dr. Salma, you had some remarks about the study, and I would like to give you the chance first to maybe make them before. There's already quite a few questions in the Q&A. We will be trying to answer some of them live, but also some will be answered in written form. But if you have any more questions, please send them in the Q&A. It's your word.
Thank you so much, Rania. And yes, I have to agree with many of the points that Engineer Hazem has talked about, because they all intersect with the different issues. We cannot, although I mean, I see that we are all in a situation where Amman became this big, giant, massive problem, despite all the attempts over the years by different managements to solve it. And because we do not want to go for big solutions, so the tactical approach is also important. And yes, we have to agree on it. Again, but yeah, when we talk about the BRT is another massive infrastructure solution that, as Engineer Hazem has said, is not really, we could have had, I talked about it before in a session, Clubhouse session. Now also in Clubhouse, we have these sessions. And we were asking, I asked Engineer Hazem, couldn't we have just tried the lanes solutions? And if we enforce them, because it's not only about drawing a line, it is about enforcement, about how the management of the city and the police department, the traffic department is enforcing it in order to ensure it. But now to come to the intersectionality. And again, when we talk about gender, poverty, access to job, economic access, opportunity, livability, and it's all intersecting when we're talking about it. And I see some of the issues for me, like I know that you've selected some, and I cannot not be political. I think the city, the management of the city is also a political thing. And Engineer Ahmed, I think, mentioned the fourth circle example. And I think there was any attempt to create spaces for people to express their political positions. Actually, the fourth circle was the choice of the people, and it was closed to the people. There was a political decision to close it, and we ended up standing in the streets and in the side streets and in front of hospitals, closing the road simply because there was a political will and decision to stop people to actually stand in front of the Prime Ministry, although they were never a threat. So really, the decision for the city to be a politically viable place for people to express their needs, whether poor, women, people with disability, is not there. And that brings me to the concept that you mentioned in the report, and I think there is more investment has to be done towards that, is the neighborhood concept. Because the neighborhood is the space where political expression can happen, and then decisions. You mentioned an action plan for gender. I will ask you, how do we develop the action plan for gender? Because it's about, why don't we start with the neighborhood? Why till today we do not have neighborhood approaches and solutions where the neighborhood people, those who are living there, start discussing their needs and how the city starts responding, or the local council within that area starts responding to those needs, and if we start with a viable neighborhood, then we will be doing most of our things within the neighborhood, and then maybe we need to move from one place to another for certain reasons. Maybe more jobs will be possible for women closer to their homes, with daycares closer to their homes. Then there's, if even taking your son to swim in a public facility, not to go to a private club. All of these things, if these solutions are provided at a neighborhood level, and we know that there are NGOs who are trying to do that in some parts of Amman, like Ruwad, for example, at least trying to have the space for people to express their needs. And that brought solutions for families, for domestic violence, for the relation of families with their parents with their children. So this is something that I think is very important to also interject and start talking about, which is linking the different 5 areas that you mentioned in the report together, and to see how they can work towards supporting each other. The issue of the last mile, and talking about there were proposals within the recommendations about the bikers lanes and all of that. Again, I think the campaign that we're thinking of is actually a series of, there has to be a major communication strategy and campaign, because you cannot have a campaign without the solutions. Then you're campaigning and telling people you should use public transport, but actually the solution is not there, and women do not feel safe. There is still sexual harassment in the street to walk, because you were talking about the last mile. Again, it's not only on the bus, it's not only in the taxi, it's also walking the last stretch to get to your home. So there is a need, as Engineer Hazem was talking about, the mindsets and about the issue of women not being pushed to the private space because of the city. And that's why yes, I agree with you how important to have within the gender action plan this idea of safe and accessible public spaces. And I just want to say something which is important, and I hope you look into it in the future, that in our national strategy for women, we did it through a consultative process. We have an outcome related to women's access to infrastructure and the needed their needs in a responsive manner. And within that, there is a specific output about the availability and accessibility to the right infrastructure and the efficient and safe access to all opportunities. And within that, we have 3 areas that we mentioned clearly. Safe transportation system that responds to the needs of women and those with, not only women, but also those with disabilities. There is also another intervention relating to the provision of spaces and buildings that are family friendly and accessible to children and respond to the needs of women, and also access to all, ability to access all services. And that includes health centers, because in the end, some people need to travel 2 hours within Amman to get to a major health center. So it's not, it's also not, sometimes we feel that it is luxury to talk about livability and, access to public spaces, when even basic needs are still very difficult to access, and making women, for example, I just want to close with one example. The example of women getting early detection for cancer, for example. A woman, we were talking about gender roles, she will keep postponing doing this because the idea of going to a center to do this will take half of her day, So, her children, this son needs this, that daughter needs that, I need to cook, I need to go to work. They keep postponing that until they end up being diagnosed when it's too late, which is a very, a type of cancer, breast cancer, for example, that can be actually, you can get 99% survival rate if you catch it early on. So this is just one example of the issues. And I thank you because you are tapping on these issues, and I hope we can take this to further solutions that are intersectional also between the areas that you were discussing within the report itself.
Thank you so much for these really, really important points. And I did share in the chat also a study that Hazem also mentioned, which is the study on neighborhoods. And just to add another point as a reaction to what you were saying, of course, this is extremely important what you're saying, because if we only have, if we first of all have to go half a day to get somewhere, that's going to be the biggest obstacle, even if there is public transportation, because it's going to take so much out of our day. So really looking at how can we actually provide neighborhood care, thinking about, and in that study, we also talked about that. And we also do draw on this in the study that you have, or that we will be sharing now with you, is that you need to be able to walk to places such as healthcare, primary healthcare, but also these other like cancer, for example, screening. You need to be able having jobs close around you, all these aspects. I think another really important aspect is how do we go and having recommendations? How do we envision and implement these reports and studies? And if we don't include people, if we don't include those people that we're targeting in the process, and this is what we really try to do with the study. Before COVID, we had this idea of doing stakeholder workshops, of actually doing experiments, of having women and also men walk through Amman with sensors. Of course, with COVID-19, this all wasn't really possible. Nevertheless, this is something also for the future. Now, we do have quite a few questions in the Q&A, and I've already seen that Diala and Ahmed have answered a few. But there's one question that I would like to answer, 2 questions that we would like to answer live. One is from Maram Ismail. She is asking Ahmed, you mentioned that one of the main future interventions is to have a layout for urban policies that ensure equitable mobility for women. My question is, do we have solid statistics and data in Jordan that show what kind of gender events that women could be or have been subjected to while using public transportation networks? And Ahmed, I think I will start giving an answer, but there's another question that we would like to answer live, which is from Leila Youssef if we can elaborate more about the urban network analysis toolkit. Just as a quick question or a quick answer to Maram, there is not really comprehensive data that we can build upon within Amman or within Jordan, but they are serious attempts now to provide this kind of data. There's more and more research. But this also, for example, for us means in our reporting, we have to look at census data, we have to look at data we find ourselves, but we also have to do these stakeholder meetings. We have to provide and collect data ourselves. And of course, for the future, having gender-based data that is based on Amman and in Jordan, and not just having it from global experiences, because there's a lot of this data. For example, in India, there's a lot of this data now being provided. In certain European states, there's a lot of this data. I know London has quite good gender-based data, but for Jordan, this is not yet the case. Now, Ahmed, would you like to answer the question from Leila?
Of course, I had the pleasure to read all the questions and I tried to answer some of them. And your question, Leila, in particular, is purely technical. So in a nutshell, this tool gives you the option to do the following. You have a network, A, which is a bunch of lines that represents streets in the city. And then you have your home as a point. It acts as a point. For example, my point has coordinates X and Y in my house. And then you have destinations. Destinations can be a grocery shop, a public park, a health care system, or let's say a health center, and then anything in between that you want to select. So what you do with this tool is you give it your location or the points, which are the houses, on a certain area of study, and then you assign, the network is already defined by GIS, and then you have the destinations. You have to tell the tool where you want to go. So if we selected, let's say, for example, the bus station hubs for BRT as points of connection, what it will do, it will generate a gravity map. Of course, there are many requests that you can ask from this tool, but what we care about is the gravity map, which is translated between us all as reachability, our wusuliyya. So it gives you this heat map that I will show you again, just to give you a quick access. This one, yes. Of course, I'm gonna give it bigger. If you can see it now, this is for whole of Amman. You can see this map. Okay, so in this map in particular, we tried to connect with all the grocery shops and any kind of service within neighborhoods. And it gives you this heat map. So if we want to talk about strong connectivity, we find out that downtown Amman is very, very connected. But when we go further away, we find out that it's only connected on the main roads, which has reds here and there. And then it becomes blue and gray, which has no connection whatsoever to any service around it. So this tool, that's what provides us in GAM to develop all these maps and also to work on future projects. One of them is urban mobility and spatial justice. Because for me, as a researcher, and also as GAM, we are very, very practical. We don't theorize and just talk about theories all the time, which is important as well. We want practical solutions. And this gave us a very clear vision of how the city operates in crisis, especially if you just let people walk. So these heat maps, they're not developed using cars movement or transportation movement. It's developed using walking, distance of 600 meters. Okay, I hope that clears it.
Thank you.
If I can add, Ronya, on
yes.
these two questions, the data and I mean, it's a very interesting and nice tool that Ahmed showed. And it's based, as Ahmed said at the end, it's based on land uses and you know, sidewalks and etc. And it's but not on transport demand. And I think we have a very huge problem here in Jordan and Amman with the lack of data on transport demand. We do not know, data in terms of really deep, in-depth data talking about people's experiences, women's experiences, etc., and also just large-scale survey data. We don't have data. There is a extensive household survey that was done in Amman, 10,000 households, 40,000 people, where we got a lot of useful data, including the statistic that we keep hearing that 14% of trips in Amman are made on public transport. There are very useful insights from this data on how women, tend to use taxis more than public transport, and very, very detailed disaggregated data. The only problem is this data is from 2008. So it's from 13 years ago, and unfortunately, it hasn't been updated yet. And we still keep saying, 13% public transport. We have no idea how many people today are using public transport. So it's a shame that this hasn't been updated yet, especially since today we have the tools to really collect this data, in different ways. We don't have to have people, go to people's houses and ask questions. It could be done remotely, electronically, whatever. But I think this is essential for planning.
Thank you so much, Hazem, for this. I also remember the study that was published that Sada already mentioned with Sadaka in 2019, which also interviewed 500 women from all over Jordan. It was the first of its kind, and it was really, really breathtaking because we found out that 47% of women had already said no to a job offer because the transportation to the job take too long, would be too insecure, or would be too expensive. So when we talk really about this, how can we include more women, or how can we enable more women to take part in the labor market? This is something that we really need to take into account, of course, next to other things such as health, daycare. We have another really interesting question that I would like to ask in live. It's from Silvia Zartori. In the current context, how are local women advocating for a more gender-sensitive and responsive mobility system? What lessons can be learned from their experience in terms of what works and what does not, and advocating for women-friendlier transportation? How can women be further empowered in their advocacy efforts? I think in particular, I would really love for Dr. Salma and Dr. Diala to answer this as women. I would like to give you the chance first to react, because I think it exactly targets what both of you are doing.
Dr. Salma, can you please go first?
I was just going to say, please go, but I think that sadly, I think that under the situation in Jordan, we don't see, socially mobilized groups of women where they're actually moving, and those who are in need for these services to have their own campaigns and advocacy efforts. This is always coming from experts and, women NGOs, women activists who are pushing for these issues. For example, in case of the National Women's Strategy, we went to 12 governorates. We had we had consultations with more than 1,400 men and women, mostly like the 70% were women, 30% men, and these issues came from them. But I believe that sadly, issues like, which seem like day-to-day details, they do not come across as the first thing in terms of complaining or mobilization. For example, issues of poverty, issues of unemployment, issues of lack of decent work environment come across more strongly than the issue of transportation. Although, if the government of Jordan has thought of transportation as a strategic solution to many of the issues that we are talking about, I think we would have avoided many of the things that we are suffering today, including, because I know you are talking about Amman, but including having a cross-governorate transport system that allows women's movement in a safe way and in a short time within the day between the governorates in order to work where the economic concentration is. And actually, if it was there, then economic activities and investments would have come to the governorates as well. But this didn't happen. But again, these are things that now are seen as being carried by the elites. Not that they are elitist issues, but they are being held, advocated for through what is seen the elite or intellectual or activists, women from within the female, you know, women active movement, but not seen as people coming up, because this is another political issue. How are we, how are women being mobilized? Are they really able to feel safe in political mobilization, in terms of political mobilization? What is happening in the past few years in terms of, you know, closures on freedom of speech, on sometimes those who are demonstrating, even some women are being held even if for few hours. And how is this reflecting on women themselves and their families, because this is not seen as acceptable for women to be held in a police station in comparison to a man. So even the movement itself is not easy. For example, what we are supporting in terms of, for example, the teachers campaign, which is called قم مع المعلم. This is a campaign that started and was supported by the ILO, the Jordanian National Commission for Women. We are supporting the owners of the cause campaigning. But again, it takes more than one player. So at the official level, we have to push, we keep sending letters, we keep going to the parliament. They do their tactics in front of the ministries, in the parliament, but it has to be worked on a multiple level, like the level of studies, like the knowledge-based, that there is knowledge and data that supports this. And at the same time, we have the mobilization at the grassroots, and then those who are advocating and working with the government and the parliament, for example, if there are issues related to the legislation. And this way we can really impact change. So it's not that simple.
Thank you very much. I insisted that you go first because you are an example for people, for a woman, an empowered woman that is supporting female and that is constantly highlighting issues that women suffer from, that you do not necessarily suffer from in particular, but you have this responsibility, and so do I as an academic, and so does Ahmed, and so does everyone that holds a position and that understands the level of responsibility they have to advocate and to be the voice of the unheard. So basically what I wanted to say is, like, for example, having women like Dr. Salma in the National Commission, having Sadaqa on board with their slogan is literally to create women-friendly work environments, but still extending the work that they do onto the different dimensions that may have an impact on the work environment. So basically when they did their research on transportation, they did it because it has an impact on the magnitude of women's involvement in the GDP, for example. So basically understanding our positionality, our responsibility as different disciplines, and advocating and adopting similar approaches like the ones that we did in our study. So basically we emphasized intersectionality, but at the same time this study is also cross-sectorial. It is also interdiscipline. At the same time, it is participatory. So using all these words that engage the different stakeholders and put them together on the same discussion table to find solutions that address the different dimensions and the different angles is crucially important. I don't have anything to add besides what Dr. Salma Nim said, because you said it and you put it there quite nicely.
Okay, I think because
just
go ahead, Hazan.
I wanted to just emphasize what Dr. Salma said about working on multiple tracks, and you know, she was involved in and I was involved in Ma'an Nasr, which you mentioned, Ronia. This is sort of what we tried to do in Ma'an Nasr. We were working on research, on studies. We went to parliament at one point, lobbied for certain changes in the law. We were talking about building awareness, and we also developed small-scale solutions, which, you know, the map that many maybe of you are familiar with. So I think working on multiple tracks is important and can be more effective because each of the tracks can feed into and enhance the other. Just wanted to emphasize that.
Thank you so much. We are almost at the end of the panel discussion. I would like to ask one more question. Just give me 1 second, and then it would be, and it's quite of a critical question. Can we really enable sustainable transportation? So when we think about public transportation, when we think about a transportation system in Amman, but also outside of Amman, and including also active mobility, walking, if we do not start working immediately on inclusivity. and why not? And I would like for everybody to get the chance to answer this question and have a minute to kind of end the panel. And I would like to start with Ahmed.
That's a great question, Rania. Discussing sustainability of any system, to me at least, as someone that is, again, someone that works in a practical sense, we always talk about sustainability, but not everyone understands what sustainability really means when it comes to addressing real issues. That's why within this study, we have to just take a moment and pause a little bit and look at the sites of selection as themes for intervention, for inclusive intervention. Because if we diversify the selection criteria of the sites and presented their issues vividly and very simple challenges to everybody, then you are intrinsically improving the sustainability of any system in the future. So for me, yes, it can be, if I want to answer it. However, we have to approach it very practically, not just share with them what we found and that's it. It's very critical, like what my previous colleagues mentioned, that we include these ideas and these terminologies within actual existing actions or projects within the city. For policymakers, for everybody else, even for the public, they have to start talking about what it means to be intersectional, what it means to have poverty in urban settings. What is poverty? Nobody really understands what the idea of poverty means. They only equate it to let's say income, and that's it. No, poverty also means you lack access to public spaces. You lack access to expression, political expression. This is also part of the intersectional approach that we want to highlight. So again, yes, it can be, as long as we all understand that these little problems that we face should be talked about more vividly and incorporated practically within any action that we want to develop.
Thank you. Dr. Salma, I think I would like to give you the word now.
I want to agree with Engineer Ahmed about talking. I think that we cannot move forward without having a real inclusive approach to solutions. We can't, we should have started, we cannot say can we start today? We should have started 20 years ago. And that's the point. We haven't, till today, I don't think the concept of inclusion in terms of assessment and solutions did not happen. So we do not include in assessing needs, we do not include with planning for solutions. And also we have to go to key, one of the most important things to stop investing in big, large scale projects. And if we use that money, whether the one that was spent in creating a gentrification project in Al-Abdali to the bridges of BRT, if those were solutions that were spread across the city, small fund, small budgets across the cities, in reality, we have two Ammans. I find it very sad when some people say Amman is beautiful, and some people say, where is that Amman that is beautiful? Some people live in a beautiful Amman, although it's also unusable, and very difficult to move between it. So we need to have inclusion. We need an inclusive approach. We need to do right budgeting for the solutions that need to be into smaller interjections, taking into consideration strategic overall solutions in terms of networking, but not through huge investments. So that's my, I'm not an expert now in urban planning, but just my hunch towards how we can start moving forward.
I think on this note, it would be quite interesting now to hear Hazem. Working also on transportation, but also sometimes in these bigger investment projects, it would be quite interesting to hear your response to that.
No, I completely agree with what Dr. Salma said. I'm putting my transportation planner hat on. I think We cannot do sustainable transportation without inclusivity. Sustainable transportation, by definition, is multimodal transportation. It's providing people with different options, providing different users with different options, with walking, with cycling, with public transport, active mobility, micro mobility, using your car. So sustainable transport is multimodal. It's about providing different options. So it's about involving everyone, involving different groups of people. So it is by definition an inclusive, concept. So I think absolutely. I mean, we cannot achieve this without being inclusive and without, as Dr. Salma mentioned, including the needs, or this is what I said about changing the mindset, being appreciative of the needs of different groups of people, different users of the road, different users of the system, and based on that, creating solutions for them. And those solutions, I completely agree, do not have to be large-scale infrastructure projects. They have to be a mix, I think, of small-scale solutions and using technology, using tactical urbanism, using small-scale neighborhood-level interventions, but also the large-scale rapid transit projects.
Okay, Diala, I think you'll be the last panelist to answer.
Situation. I mean, how can I follow up on all of this? Thank you again. I'll have to agree, and I'll have to put everything together. So definitely sustainability is a comprehensive idea in general. It needs to be inclusive of the economic dimensions, the environmental dimensions, and the social dimensions. Often the focus remains only on the economic and environmental dimensions, with the social dimensions being pushed down the priority lists. Sustainable at the same time means resilient, means smart, means multidimensional, means inclusive. And probably in order to have implementable, sustainable ideas, we need to think beyond the research phase and move towards the design, the implementation, and the evaluation. So this multidimension that Dr. Salma was talking about means that we need to think in a metropolitan and neighborhood approach at the same time. We need to think in a comprehensive and tactical way at the same time. We need to be strategic while addressing urgent issues at the same time. And this is why we are suggesting the Gender Action Plan as a realistic plan that has technical solutions, that identifies the key stakeholders with the exact interventions and budgeting and all the technical details that allow these interventions to become a reality. And with this, I wrap up, and thank you again.
Thank you so much. I know we're a little bit behind time, but I would ask you to still stay with us for another 15 minutes. I will now share a small survey. We will be sharing the studies now as well for you to download. Just while I share the survey for all the attendees with us today, for the panelists, if everybody could just put their camera on, also the ones that are like Dina and Sarah and Haroon, we would just like to take a picture while everybody else is taking the survey. And then I will be sharing the survey results. So you have around a minute to answer the survey. It's now in the chat. And if there's any issues, please let us know. Now for us, I think it would be good to take a picture. So I'm just gonna open that. If everybody could just smile now for the next around 5 seconds. Let's do this again. Because some of us had their eyes closed. I will not say who that was. So just look in the camera and smile, and I will be taking the snip now. Perfect, that is done. So maybe you can also all answer the survey now. And I will be sharing the live results in a second.
Ronya, I may have to drop off at 12:30 because I have another appointment.
Okay, that's we totally understand that. Let me just share their survey results because I think you will be quite interested in this one. So moving around, and in Amman as a woman is. And as you can see, challenging is the biggest on this word cloud. So there's also difficult, not always attainable, inconvenient, not friendly, unenjoyable, a hassle, stressful. I haven't really seen anything positive here. Also in the Arabic, there's sab, difficult, not safe. So I think this is exactly what we are trying to show again in the study, and also really putting in efforts how this can be improved with these very exact recommendations for future actions. But again, and I will stop sharing now. Again, as we all know, it's always good to talk, and it's always easy to sit here and talk, but that's not actually going to get us where we need to go. We will now be showing a short movie, while I also will share both the presentation link for you to download the presentation as well as the studies. Here at this point, I really would like to thank the panelists again. Dr. Salma, it was a pleasure for you, that you were here with us today. You really added to the discussion. Hazem, I know you have to go, so I'm really trying to hurry. Thank you as well, Hazem. It's really, really great to have you with us, and to have this kind of private sector, but also really a transport consultant and a real civil society activist with us. And of course, Diala, Ahmed, and Harun, thank you for producing this amazing study. Dina will also, after the movie, have some concluding notes. So the movie, it's a short documentary on mobility in Jordan. It's around 10 minutes. It's going to be in Arabic, but there will be a translation into English. So now is your chance to actually also see this movie with English translation. And again, then Dina will have some concluding words. So we need another around 15 minutes of you. I will just share real quick the study link for you to download before I'm gonna share the video. Oh, this is the wrong one. Just a quick second. Why is this? Okay, we'll be showing this first, and then I will be sharing the study. I'm very sorry, but the window just closed for me. This is, here we go. I have to redo this. I knew that in the end of the event, there's always technical problems. That's fine. You should be able to see it now.
اهلا ومرحبا بكم من جديد، حياكم الله جميعا، اسعد الله صباحكم.
معظمنا يسكن المدينة لأنها تتيح لنا الخدمات، ولأنها تقربنا من الأهل والأصدقاء. الوصول بها وهذا القرب يتوقف على قدرتنا. تواجه دولا كثيرة ومنها الأردن تحديات كبيرة مما يؤثر على الحراك الاقتصادي والاجتماعي لبعض مكوناته.
موضوع حرية التنقل والوصول للفرص سواء الاقتصادية والاجتماعية والسياسية هو موضوع أساسي وحيوي لأي دولة في العالم، خصوصا للدول اللي أكثر فيها فئات المجتمع المهمشة سواء كانوا نساء، كبار سن، ذوي احتياجات خاصة، لأنه هاي الفئات بحاجة إنه تطلع من دائرة ودوامة التهميش والفقر اللي هي بحاجة إنها توصل لهاي الفرص عبر موضوع النقل العام، تحترمها، قادرة إنها هي توصلها، قادرة إنها تركب باص توصل ل
Yeah, I just received a notice that the sound isn't very clear. Then I will just share the link with Diala real quick. It might be that it's my internet connection. And we will try again. Otherwise, we will just share the link with you. Of course, then it will only be in Arabic. So let's just give it another try. Diala, we were at 2 minutes and 45. So just you find the moment again. And also for everybody, Dina just shared the studies where you can download it in English and in Arabic. You just have to follow the link that she just posted. Yeah, we can't see the video. I think it's best to just share the documentary within the chat as a link. And maybe I will just say a few words in English about it for everybody to know.
Can you see my screen now?
No, we can only see a black screen.
Hold on.
Yeah, but we could see the movie, by the way. We could see the YouTube. Yeah.
Okay.
And hearing the sounds?
You didn't play it. It didn't play when you shared it.
Is it playing now?
في كسب الرزق والوصول للخدمات.
Can you hear it
ولأنها
now?
تقربنا من الأهل والأصدقاء.
I can't see it.
I cannot see.
وهذا القرب المرجو يتوقفان على قدرتنا على التنقل داخل المدينة.
Ronia, I can try because I'm on my desktop.
Diala, if you do share screen, there's 2 little boxes, share sound and optimize for video clip, that you have to click. Let's try one more time.
Yes, I'm gonna send it to Ahmed as well.
Maybe just as a quick note on this documentary, it's a documentary that was done last year by the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung in cooperation with Karwoon, which is a wonderful NGO, an organization that also acts as a think tank, really looking at sustainability issues. But it's working now. Diala, we can see it, so let's try it. No, it's not working. It's not with us today, the video.
تقديم الخدمات للمجتمع ككل.
العديد من المشاكل بيواجهها النقل العام، ومن ضمن هاي المشاكل اللي هي الوصول لشبكة النقل العام أولاً. ثاني شيء كمية الأمان اللي بحس فيها الشخص للوصول أو استخدام وسائل النقل. ثالث شيء نوعية وجودة الخدمة الموفرة في النقل العام. هلأ بالتأكيد هاي النقاط ممكن تكون مشتركة بين مدن مختلفة، لكن إحنا بعمان بنواجه فيها مشكلة حقيقية حالياً.
المشاكل في النقل العام بالأردن منها هيكلية ومنها في أنماط التشغيل، بس المشكلة بالأساس هي أنه النقل العام على مدى السنوات ما كان أولوية، وصار في انحياز لاستخدام السيارة للتنقل من المستخدم ومن صاحب القرار، يعني البنية التحتية مؤسسة للتنقل بالسيارة. فمشاكل النقل العام اللي بنشوفها هلا هي غياب في الأمان في بعض الأحيان. النقل العام مش مريح، المنظومة بالكامل يعني مش بس الباص اللي بنركب عليه، فيش موثوقية، يعني ما في جداول زمنية المستخدم بيقدر يعتمد عليها، في غياب للمعلومة، يعني ما في خاطة بيقدر يستخدمها المستخدم، ما بيعرف إمتى الباص بده يجي وإمتى بده يروح، ما بيعرف إيش الباصات اللي بتخدمه. يعني معظم الناس اللي بنشوفهم اليوم تستخدم النقل العام هي ناس مجبورة أنها تستخدم النقل العام.
وبالإضافة لتحديات النقل العام على مستوى المجتمع ككل، فإن بعض فئات المجتمع تواجه تحديات إضافية نتيجة لاحتياجات النقل الخاصة بها والغير مستوفاة من قبل المنظومة الحالية.
مدى استجابة الدول ومدى استجابة منظومة النقل العام لاحتياجات هاي الفئات المهمشة وتمكينها من أنها توصل للفرص وتخرج من دوامة التهميش اللي هي فيها بيعتمد بشكل رئيسي إن لم يكن بشكل مباشر على تقليل مجال عدم المساواة والتمييز، وتحديداً التمييز بين الجنسين. موضوع احتياج المرأة لنقل عام يختلف عن احتياجات الرجل للارتباط العضوي والمباشر بين الأدوار الاجتماعية للجنسين، الأدوار النمطية كمان بدي أحكي للجنسين واحتياجاتهم لأنهم يلبوا هاي الأدوار. النساء والأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة احتياجات خاصة واعتبارات خاصة لا تقوم شبكة المواصلات العامة ووسائل التنقل العام بمراعاتها. أثبتت الدراسات أن المرأة تتنقل بنمط مختلف عن الرجل، فهي تقوم بتلبية حاجات المنزل وبالقيام بأكثر من مهمة خلال المشوار الواحد خلينا نحكي. أما بالنسبة للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة فكل إعاقة مختلفة لها متطلبات خاصة يجب توفيرها سواء في البيئة المبنية وفي الأرصفة ومحطات الانتظار بالإضافة إلى داخل المركبة بحد ذاتها.
ورغم كثرة التحديات التي تواجه النقل العام في الأردن، إلا أن هناك جهوداً تبذل حالياً لتحسين جودة الخدمة وتيسير الوصول لها وزيادة الأمان في استخدامها، سواء في العاصمة عمان أو في مدن أخرى في المملكة.
على المدى القصير والطويل نحن نرى بوادر تحسن في تعزيز منظومة النقل العام في الأردن، مثل ما نرى أيضاً في موضوع الباص السريع في أمانة عمان، وأيضاً ما رأينا بمبادرة مع النصل. هي مبادرة انطلقت من المجتمع المدني عندنا في الأردن واستطاعت أن تسخر التكنولوجيا الذكية في وضع مسارات واضحة للباصات. رأينا أيضاً تجربة ناجحة لباص عمان، والآن نرى في إمكانية تعزيز وزيادة عدد الباصات الحديثة التي تزيد من راحة المستخدمين، وأيضاً موضوع الراحة والنظافة ومدونة السلوك للمشغلين للباصات، ووجود أيضاً أنظمة رقابية ذكية تشعر المستخدم وخاصة النساء بالراحة في استخدام هذه الوسائل.
ولكن لإحداث التحول المرجو في شبكات النقل الأردنية بشكل يخدم المجتمع بكل فئاته، فإن الكثير من الجهود لا بد أن تبذل، ليس فقط لتطوير الشبكات، ولكن أيضاً لمراجعة مدى شمولية الخطط الحالية لجميع فئات المجتمع وإدماج هذه الفئات بشكل أكبر في عملية صناعة القرارات المتعلقة بالنقل.
نصمم المدينة لأكثر الفئات المهمشة، نحن فعلياً عم نصمم المدينة لجميع الفئات. يعني إحنا إذا بنصمم المدينة لذوي الإعاقة وبتكون صديقة لذوي الإعاقة، نحن فعلياً عم نفيد جميع فئات المجتمع، عم نفيد المرأة، عم نفيد الرجل، عم نفيد الكبير في السن. فهذا هو الأساس لازم يكون. بس إحنا نصمم منظومة نقل عام لازم نحط أكثر فئات مهمشة على رأس الاحتياجات ونصمم المدينة على أساسهم.
إلى الحلول التصميمية والتخطيطية التي ممكن أن نضعها كمخططين حضريين، هناك العديد من الحلول الفنية والسياسات التي ممكن من خلالها مجابهة المشاكل التي تتعلق بالنقل العام. من أهم هذه الحلول هي خرط الفئات المختلفة في صنع القرار، جعلهم جزء من هذه العملية وأخذ بعين الاعتبار المشاكل التي يمرون بها، وبالتالي سماع آرائهم وجعلها جزء من الحلول التي ممكن أن نقدمها كصناع قرار. من ناحية أخرى يجب خرط هذه الفئات ليس فقط في وسائل النقل العام كمستخدمين، ولكن كمشغلين وكأشخاص يعملون في قطاع الصيانة، فأن يكونوا متواجدين في المراحل المختلفة للتنقل العام ولشبكة المواصلات.
وجود السيدات في عملية تصميم السياسة جدا مهم، لأنهن يفهمن التحديات التي تواجهها السيدات، وأيضا الشرائح الأخرى قد تكون المهمشة في المجتمع من ذوي الاحتياجات الخاصة وغيرهم.
في بلد يسكن أكثر من 19 سكانه المدن، فإن سهولة الحركة في المدينة تصبح عنصراً أساسياً للحراك الاقتصادي والاجتماعي لسكانه. ولذا فإن المدينة إن لم توفر القدرة على الحركة بيسر لسكانها بكل أطيافهم، فإن ما يتبقى لبعضهم قد لا يتعدى ازدحامها وضجيجها وغلاءها.
Thank you so much. Ahmed, if you could maybe stop sharing. Thank you as well that we were able to use your a lot better quality internet. I shared the information to access the video, the studies, as well as the presentation. And I would now like to give the word to Dina Kisby. She is the program manager. And she is actually taking over my role. This is my last event. So the words are yours. And thank you very much again for attending and being with us today. You're muted.
Sorry, apologies. First of all, thank you so much for your participation, your comments, your productive discussions. In today's discussion and this study, we show and it's evident that we need a holistic overview for the transportation and the mobility in Amman in order for us to ensure the inclusiveness and the sustainability of the system. It's evident that transport cannot whatsoever be separated from any economical or social development. This work and this study has been done and conducted through specialists. And what's so amazing of it is that it's been done on an evidence-based approach, and it's on a participatory approach also from different people representing different sectors, varying from government, academia, and private.
Dina,
and yes,
your voice apparently isn't very clear. There's some sound in it, so maybe you can try to get the mic a little bit closer.
Yes, definitely. So I'm like just focusing on the fact that this study has been done from different background specialists, and which made it more inclusive and direct to the point. The study also focused on specific zones and marking the potential, opportunities, and challenges, while ultimately bridging the gaps in the available policies and strategies that are being conducted and planned for under Greater Amman Municipality. We all need to focus on all aspects that are related to the transport and mobility. First and last mile, feeders, the networks, the bus stops, and also not to forget that it needs to be inclusive, covering all parts of society, especially those marginalized groups. It is evident that we need to work on having more detailed data that is gender or survey based, that is also related to transport and usage. We also need to engage stakeholders in the early discussions in order for them to be on board and adopt these recommendations. I like to conclude by the most used sentence that sustainability means inclusiveness, and we need to ensure and keep that in mind in order for us to achieve something. And luckily, this study, among other studies that were being conducted with British Egypt and other groups, there are the building blocks towards achieving this goal we were striving for, to have a sustainable, resilient, inclusive transport system in our beloved city, Amman. Thank you so much, everyone, and we would love for you to read our study and join us in all our future events as well. Thank you so much.